Pretty good season last year with the Vikings, but I'm not sold on him either. Moving on to the NFC North. Again, consensus is picking Chicago, but I was interested to see what you got here. You think the Vikings will be at the bottom?
Yes, and I think the Vikings are going to be at the bottom because of the quarterback. There's a common theme here. The quarterback for a lot of these teams. They have arguably the best offensive ecosystem around the quarterback in the entire NFL. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, tight end TJ Hawkinson, running back Aaron Jones, Kevin O'Connell, the reigning coach of the year, calling plays on the headset. But J.J. McCarthy, he missed out on really big developmental reps in practice last year after tearing his meniscus last preseason. And then if we just look at his profile coming out of college, he didn't ever throw for over 3,000 yards in a season at Michigan, nor did he run for over 500 yards in a season at Michigan. And the last top 10 pick to come out of college with those benchmarks lacking was Detroit Lions' third overall pick, Joey Harrington, back in 2002 out of Oregon. He was a total bust. So I know there's some hope for McCarthy out of Michigan, but his collegiate profile plus missing all of last year with the meniscus injury, I don't think bodes well for the Vikings in 2025. And they play arguably to me in the toughest division in football.
You know, I'm absurdly high on the Chicago Bears this year, so I am happy to hear that you don't have them at the bottom. Garrett, let's move on to the NFC South. The team that most experts peg for the cellar is New Orleans. Hard to argue with that. Are you on the same page?
Yeah, I agree with all those experts you referenced, Katie. I mean, this could very well be the team that has the number one overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft next April. They went 0-7 in non-Derek Carr starts last year, 0-6 when week one starter for this year, Spencer Rattler, started, and he beat out rookie second-round pick Tyler Shuck for the starting job. And they're a team that just is in salary cap, disarray, aging team. Outside of Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, who kind of really faded with injuries his last couple of years in Dallas, he's going to have to play a big role. It's just an older team that really doesn't have a whole lot of developing prospects, and it's probably going to be incredibly rough in 2025. Incredibly
rough. As Falcons fans say, they might be the Aints this year. Garrett, over to the AFC now. We'll start in the East. Jets have the lowest win total at around 5.5. Do you think that means they're going to end up in the basement, or maybe their defense can get them up?
Yeah, my pick for last place in the AFC East is the Jets, and it's because another Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, touchdown Russell Wilson, the guy who started the first 6 weeks for Pittsburgh ahead of Wilson last year, was Justin Fields. And their passing offense averaged under 200 passing yards per game in those 6 starts, even though he went 4-2. That was more on the ground game, and Fields just hasn't displayed an aptitude in the NFL to be a guy who can beat you with his arm, and I think that's going to really hinder the New York Jets this season, even though they do have a ton of talent. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner on the defensive side of the ball, Breece Hall at running back. I just think Justin Fields isn't that guy.
Fair enough. Justin Fields just isn't that guy. Let's head now to the AFC West. The Chiefs, of course, still heavy favorites here. Denver and LA expected to contend for playoff spots, but you say not so fast.
Yeah, so this is where it starts to get a little spicy, Katie, and I'm going to pick the Denver Broncos, a team that did make the postseason last year, to finish last in the AFC West. To me, this could be the most competitive division in the AFC this year. I mean, the coaches in this division, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, and now Pete Carroll with the Raiders. And I think the reason the Broncos are going to finish last, the division got better. The Raiders have Geno Smith, someone who overcame Seattle's kind of rough offensive line that I mentioned a little while ago to really thrive and be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I think he can really elevate the ceiling for Las Vegas in 2025. Drafted college football's best running back, Ashton Genty. And I just think with the coaching change, much better coaching from Pete Carroll, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly, way better personnel, that the Raiders could rise from last place to third place in this division, and that the Broncos in Bo Nix's second season, they may take a step back because, as we've seen the last few years from guys who had great rookie years, quarterbacks, they've taken a little sophomore slump. Look at C.J. Stroud. That was an offensive line thing. But I think Bo Nix might take a slight step back this year in year 2.
Okay, Bo Nix is one of my favorite frisky quarterbacks. That's a bummer for me to hear. But Garrett, let's head now to the AFC North. Most of the experts in this one, they think that Cleveland is going to bring up the rear here, despite Myles Garrett anchoring the defense. What do you think about this one? Do you think it's going to be Cleveland? I mean, when you look at the rest of the division, I don't see how anyone else could be at the bottom.
You're exactly right, Katie. My pick here is the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett is awesome. He's the first guy ever to have at least 14 sacks in 4 consecutive seasons. But Joe Flacco is 40. 2 years ago, when he led them to the playoffs with his hot tear down the stretch that got him NFL Comeback Player of the Year, he was 38. There's a track record of 38-year-old quarterbacks doing well as they age. 40, the only guys who play well at that position at 40 has been Brett Favre in 2009 with the Vikings when they made an NFC title run, and Tom Brady throughout his 40s. Other guys typically deal with injuries and or regression, and I think Flacco's going to deal with both. Their running back situation really murky. No more Nick Chubb. He's on the Texans. Quinshon Judkins, their second-round pick running back, he's still unsigned after some legal issues. I just think offensively, this could very well be a mess for Cleveland, even though with Myles Garrett and some of the other defensive playmakers, they'll probably be pretty good on that side of the ball.
Yeah, but that's not going to win you games. All right, let's close this out with the AFC South. Houston is the clear favorite, and consensus last place is Tennessee, but you're more concerned with the Colts.
I am. My pick for the AFC South last place finisher is the Indianapolis Colts, and it's purely based on a vote of no confidence for Daniel Jones. He's started his team's first 10 games in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and in those first 10 games, under 10 touchdown passes. Other quarterbacks this decade have combined for only 4 such seasons. Jones has 4 of those on his own. He just doesn't beat you downfield with his arm. And I think the most glaring evidence of that was in the Colts preseason finale against the Packers. He had first-round rookie tight end Tyler Warren open deep down the right sideline. No one really in Warren's zip code. Warren had left the linebacker in coverage in the dust, and he just threw it out of bounds off to the right. I mean, he just completely missed a wide open Warren. And so that right there is kind of a microcosm of what this year could look like for the Colts as long as they stick with Daniel Jones.
All right, Garrett Patel, thank you so much.
What's up, Vikings Nation? This is Victor with Report Vikings. And guys, we might have another trade rumor to talk about. Raiders wide receiver Jacoby Meyers has reportedly requested a trade, and guess who's popping up as a potential landing spot? Yeah, our Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Raiders are saying they don't plan on trading him, but let's be honest, we've seen this story before. A player wants out, the team plays hardball, and then a few weeks later, boom, he's gone. And Myers is in a contract year, so the Raiders might realize they're better off getting something back instead of losing him for nothing. He's only 28 years old, and he's been solidly productive. 18 touchdowns over his last 3 seasons and a 1,000-yard year on his resume. He's not a superstar like Tyreek Hill, but he's a reliable route runner, tough in the red zone, and a guy who would immediately give J.J. McCarthy another trustworthy option. Let's look at our situation right now. Justin Jefferson is obviously WR1, the best in the league. Jordan Addison is suspended for the first 3 games. Rondale Moore is already lost for the season with that knee injury. And Jalen Naylor, still banged up with a hand issue. That means right now, we're depending on rookies like Ty Felton and practice squad level depth to carry the load behind Jefferson. That's not ideal if you want to set up a rookie QB for success. Adding a guy like Myers, who's consistent, doesn't drop many passes, and can move the chains, would take a lot of pressure off JJ early in the year. Here's the tricky part. The proposed trade package floating around is a 2026 4th-round pick. That sounds like a bargain, right? But here's the issue. The Raiders don't necessarily need wide receivers. What they really need is help at cornerback and offensive line. 2 areas where, let's be honest, the Vikings aren't exactly deep enough to trade from. So if Kwesi really wants Myers, we might have to outbid other teams by giving up more draft capital. Maybe that turns into a 3rd rounder instead of a 4th. That's the balancing act. How much do you invest in a short-term boost for McCarthy versus keeping your draft ammo for the future? Personally, I think Myers would be a perfect fit as a WR2 or WR3 in this offense. He's not flashy, but he's reliable, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. Look at Kirk Cousins in Atlanta right now. Say one of the reasons he wanted weapons was because he knew a consistent guy like Myers is valuable. For McCarthy, adding Myers would give him Jefferson, Addison, and a safety blanket who knows how to get open. That's a big deal for a young quarterback adjusting to NFL defenses. So here's my question to you, Vikings fans. Would you pull the trigger on a Jacoby Myers trade if all it cost was a 4th-round pick? Or do you think it's smarter to hold on to that draft capital and trust the young guys behind Jefferson? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear if you're in or out on this deal. And as always, hit that like button, share this video with your fellow Vikings fans, and subscribe to Report Vikings so you don't miss any updates as this story develops. Because one thing's for sure, McCarthy needs weapons, and Jacoby Meyers could be that under-the-radar move that takes this offense to another level. Skol Vikings!